الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Respected Nazir of Masjid al-Mu'minun, Brother Zainul Abidin, respected Imam, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our topic is on Ilmu Akhir al-Zaman and modern Western civilization. What does Ilmu Akhir al-Zaman have to tell us about modern Western civilization? Or in English, Islamic Eschatology. An Islamic Eschatological explanation of modern Western civilization. This has never been attempted before by any scholar of Islam. Never. First time now we speak that. It's not because scholars in the past did not have knowledge. Not at all. It's because you could not attempt the subject until certain events had unfolded in the world. Like, for example, that we Muslims had control over the Holy Land. Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, the Holy Land, which is where you have Masjid al-Aqsa, Jerusalem. And in 1917, Europeans, the European army, defeated the Muslims and took over the Holy Land. And from 1918 to 1948, Britain was the mandate power controlling the Holy Land. And Britain allowed the Jews to return to the Holy Land. And then in 1948, a state of Israel was created in the Holy Land. And between 1948 and today, that state of Israel has continued to grow and grow and grow in power until now it is poised and ready to take over from a United States of America, which is now in irreversible decline. I'm sorry that I have to be using the English language. I wish I could speak to you in Bahasa. A United States of America which is now in irreversible decline. And Israel is poised and ready to take over from the United States to become the ruling state in the world. So how was it possible for scholars 100 years ago to be able to understand Islamic eschatology? It is now being presented to the world of Islam for the first time. For the first time. Let us begin by defining who is modern Western civilization. It is the creation of Europe of the West. There are two Europes. One is Europe of the West, and that's the one that beats the drum very loudly. And the other is Europe of the East. And you hardly hear about that Europe. Modern Western civilization is a creation of Europe of the West. Eastern Europe is not a part of modern Western civilization. Russia is not a part of modern Western civilization. Europe of the West began doing strange things more than 1,000 years ago, when the Pope in Rome, in the Vatican, Roman Catholic Pope, launched the Crusades. We usually swallow the half-truth that the Crusades were Christian wars waged by Christians to reclaim Jerusalem. That's not completely true. No. Because it was only one part of the Christian world which waged the Crusades: Western Europe. And when Western Europe waged the Crusades, they did it for two reasons, not one. The first reason, the one which is in the news, is they want Jerusalem. They want to liberate holy Jerusalem from Muslim rule. But the second reason is that Europe of the West had one version of the Christian religion, and it was different from the Christian religion of Europe of the East. The two hated each other. If you think Shia-Sunni rivalry is terrible in Islam, that was worse. The capital of this Eastern European Christian world was Constantinople. And when Europe of the West waged the Crusades, they were targeting two cities, not one. They wanted Constantinople, and they also wanted Jerusalem. So Europe of the West is a very strange creature. We got to study it. When they did succeed in conquering Jerusalem, they behaved like barbarians. There was nothing of the Christian religion in their behavior. They slaughtered everything: men, women, children, babies, everything they slaughtered. Are these Christians? We have to ask ourselves. That's how they behave. When we, on the other hand, Salahuddin Ayyubi, when we conquered them, when we defeated them, Salahuddin was the most honorable and dignified of all leaders you could find. Magnanimous, showing them what it is to be a civilized people. So who are these people who behave like barbarians and yet call themselves Christians? And then they also conquered Constantinople. And they held Constantinople for about 80 years until they planned their plans and Allah plans His plans, and Allah is the best of planners. And this eastern part of the Christian world was able to recover Constantinople. So who are these people? Western Europe, who gave us modern Western civilization, which today has impacted all over the world. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." Whosoever imitates a people belong to them. We used to have to write letters, and the letter would go by ship and would take months to reach. And then came a time when we used to send the telegram, and it might take a few days. And then came telephone. When you were children, you didn't have any telephone in your house. No. Did you? The elders? No. And then came instant telephone calls. And I have one here, a cell phone. And now you have the mail that you don't have to write and post. It's something called electronic mail, email. Where is it coming from? Is it Eastern Europe? No. It's coming from West. Western civilization, instant communication. And the whole world embraces it. Everybody. Even the Indonesian maid, my daughter, your daughter, who today is a slave, she's a slave. Don't fool yourself. These are slaves now. Even these slaves, who are slaves in Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore, working for the salary of a dog, even each one of them have cell phone. They call in Indonesia. Long ago, we had to travel, perform the Hajj. You will leave Kuala Lumpur 3 months before and travel by donkey and by horse and by cart and by ship, by camel. Now, sometimes 2 weeks before, you fly out. And a few days after, you fly back. Where did they come from? The modern aircraft, the modern motor car, the modern train, the iron horse. It didn't come from China, it didn't come from Africa, it didn't come from Eastern Europe, it came from Western Europe. A scientific and technological revolution which is still unfolding. Unlike anything that mankind had ever experienced in human history. And it has come from them. And every time the scientific and technological revolution advances one step, the whole rest of the world embraces it. Yeah. If you and I do not seek to understand what is happening in the world today, then I have bitter news for you. You and I have only peanuts in our head. That's our status. Allah says in the Quran that this Quran has been sent down tibyanan likulli shay, to explain all things. So this Quran must explain modern Western civilization. 100 years ago you used to buy and sell using dinar and dirham. Your grandfather, grandmother probably still have some that you used to use. Dinar and dirham. Where did this money come from that we now use? This paper and plastic and electronic money that our muftis, I don't know what will be their state on Judgment Day. I am sorry for them. They have a great surprise in store for them. The muftis who give the fatwa halal without any knowledge. They are totally ignorant. All the muftis who declare the paper money is halal, they have a very unpleasant surprise waiting for them. Where did this paper money come from? It came from them. Where did the banking system come from? We didn't have any banks 100 years ago. You had money lenders, but not banks. Today a banking system is poised to take over from governments. Let me repeat that. Today a banking system around the world is poised to take over from governments in controlling the world. Where did the banking system come from? Came from them. Who are these people? Let us turn to the Quran so that the Quran might explain. Allah speaks in the Quran about the Christians and Nasara. And He says about Nasara, وَلَتَجِدَنَّ, and you will most certainly find in time to come, أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى, that you will most certainly find in time to come that those who will be closest in love and affection for you Muslims will be those who say, we are Nasara, we are Christians. So if you find a Christian people waging war on Islam while saying it is a war on terror, you know they're not Christians. Not the Quran. The Quran is saying they're not Christians. Because they will be the closest in love and affection for Muslims. الذي قالوا إنا نصارى ذلك بأن منهم قسيسين ورهبانا وأنهم لا يستكبرون. That is because they have priests and monks amongst them, and they are not an arrogant people. No. So the definition of the Christian in Akhirul Zaman is his positive relationship with Islam and the Muslims. And then Allah speaks, this was in Surah Al-Ma'idah. In the same ayah, Allah speaks at the beginning, لَتَجِدَنَّ أشد الناس عداوة للذين آمنوا اليهود والذين أشركوا, that you will most certainly find in time to come that those who will have the greatest hatred for you, hatred burns in their hearts for you, are the Jews and those who are pursuing the agenda of shirk in the world. So we have to look for that time in history when the Jewish world shows its greatest hot hatred for Muslims, like Gaza, like what just happened in Gaza. And we have to wait for that time when a people are pursuing an agenda of shirk around the world. And when you see that, then you know, if you want to recognize the true Christian, this is how you recognize him. Today, we are living in that world, in which the Zionist Jewish world is waging hostile war against Islam and Muslims with hatred. And today we are living in that world in which Europe of the West is advancing the agenda of universal shirk. Let me briefly and rapidly give you some examples of that shirk, because nobody teaches the subject. No. Allah gave us the Khilafah state. He gave it to us through Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, the holy state of Israel. And then He gave us with Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, the holy state of Israel. And then He gave it to us with Nabi Muhammad alayhi salam. The same model, holy state of Israel, the same model, Medina. What is that model? Number one, it recognizes Allah as Al-Malik, the sovereign. If you turn away from Allah as Al-Malik and you turn to something else as Al-Malik, that is shirk. Well, that is precisely what Europe of the West did when they gave us the modern state. The modern state, of which we are all citizens, no longer recognizes Allah as Al-Malik. The state is now sovereign. Parliament is sovereign, not Allah. That is shirk. But you don't have to believe me. Just wait until you go in your grave and then you'll know. Yes, just wait. Wait for the grave and then you know whether Imran Hosein is talking nonsense or not. That is shirk. And then we go and we vote in the elections for the modern secular state. And in the process of doing so, we validate that shirk. So we become part of the shirk. You don't have to accept it. Just wait until you're in your grave and then you know whether Imran Hosein is talking nonsense or not. Allah gave us the law. He made some things halal and some things haram. And in the Quran, in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah tells us that if you make haram what Allah made halal, that is shirk. And if you make halal what Allah made haram, that is shirk. Like Allah prohibited money being lent on interest. Is it halal in Malaysia? Is it halal in Malaysia to lend money on interest? Why don't you answer me? Yes, it's halal. Just go across to any bank and you see. The law permits it. So what Allah made haram, they have made halal. That is shirk. You don't have to believe me. Just wait on the grave and then you'll know. That is what they've done, pursuing the agenda of shirk. Allah gave us dinar and dirham as money. Guess what they did? They made it haram. You didn't know that. Even Dr. Mahathir did not know that. That in the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund, which is international law, you are prohibited from using gold as money. So they made haram what Allah made halal. And we now accept it. And we follow it in this monetary system. And so we become part of the shirk. This is only 2 examples. I've given you the others. And guess what? This is the one sin that Allah will not forgive. The one sin that He will not forgive. And during this Akhir Zaman, the whole world is now embraced by that shirk. Which explains the hadith. That in Akhir Zaman, the hadith is in Sahih Bukhari 4 times. Go check it out, 4 times. That 999 out of every 1,000 people in Akhir Zaman going into Jahannam. How can we explain that He who is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim and Al-Ghaffar, how can we explain 999 out of every 1,000 in Jahannam? Only one explanation, only one: shirk. So when you see that universal shirk, and when you see the Jewish world with such hatred for you, it is at that time that you recognize the true Christian. Because the true Christian will be drawing closer to you and becoming more friendly to you and showing more love for you. Who are those Christians? Who are those Christians? We leave Surah Al-Ma'idah and we go to Surah Al-Rum. Rum. The word occurs in the whole Quran only once. Only once. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألف لام ميم غلبت الروم. Rome has been defeated. Defeated in what? A game of football? No. Defeated in warfare. Warfare. في أدنى الأرض. Rome has been defeated in a land close by. Close to where the Quran was revealed. So not in Washington, huh? No. Rome has been defeated in a land close by, close to Arabia. وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين. But Allah is saying that within a few years, Rome will turn the tables and Rome will be victorious. Oh, but the United States of America wasn't around at that time. Huh? Britain wasn't around at that time. Germany wasn't around at that time. France wasn't around at that time. NATO wasn't around at that time. So where this absolute nonsense comes from? That Rome is Washington. Huh? Have they no sense? Rome has to be a power, a military power, which existed at that time, which was defeated close to Arabia, and then within a few years was victorious. Who is Rome? Answer: Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe was called Byzantium, the Byzantine Christian Empire. And they had the Orthodox Christian faith, meaning they say we have the true Christian faith, the original Christian faith. This is what we have. The Quran goes on to say, لِلَّهِ الْأَمْرِ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَمِنْ بَعْدُ. It was in Allah's hand to determine defeat and victory. وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And on that day, when Rome is victorious, Muslims are going to celebrate. And so the Quran establishes a positive relationship between Islam and Rome. between Islam and Orthodox Christianity. Good. Having established that from the Quran, now let's proceed. Sometime after the time of Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, a division took place in Constantinople. And one part of the Christian world broke away and went to Rome and established the Vatican and gave us the Pope and the Roman Catholic faith. And it was that Pope who launched the Crusades. This part of the Christian world is best recognized by the one man in the Christian world, the Western Christian world, who is allowed to have a beard. Everybody else must shave their beards, but this fella could keep a big beard. You know him? What's his name? Santa Claus. Santa Claus is the only one allowed to have a big beard. You can't have Santa Claus without a beard. Huh? But nobody else is allowed a beard. If you have a beard, you can't serve in the armed forces. No. If you have a beard, you can't be a police officer. No. If you have a beard, you can't work in the bank. No. If you have a beard, you can't do this, you can't do that. Businesses will not employ you if you have a beard. But Santa Claus, he has his beard. So I call that Santa Claus Christianity. This part of the Christian world, the Western Christian world, wants to get the Eastern Christian world to give up their Orthodox faith and join this one. And they are in constant hostile relationship with the Eastern world. At the head of the Eastern world was Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire. But when the Ottomans, when Dajjal created the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, according to Dajjal's plan, then the leadership of Rome went to Russia. So if the Western European world is hostile to Russia, it's because it is this Christianity which is hostile to that Christianity. Even in Ukraine, the Eastern Ukraine is Orthodox. The Western Ukraine is Roman Catholic. Now let us see what does Allah say about this Western part of the European world, which has given us modern Western civilization. Because our subject is Ilmu Akhirul Zaman, modern Western civilization. Allah speaks in Surah Al-Ma'idah again, and He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith in Allah, La tattakhidul yahuda wal nasara awliya. Do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your awliya, your friends and your allies. If you use the methodology of a schoolboy, in studying the Quran, then you'll come to the foolish conclusion that Allah is talking about all Jews. And He's talking about all Christians. Don't take the Jews and don't take the Christians as your friends and allies. But when you stop being a schoolboy and you use the proper methodology to study the Quran, You know, no, Allah could not be speaking about all Jews, not at all. And He could not be speaking about all Christians, not at all. We don't have the time tonight to give you all the evidence. But we ask the question, well then, if Allah is not speaking about all Jews and all Christians, don't take them as your friends and allies. Well then, which Jews and which Christians? Which Jews and which Christians? I have explained this ayah of the Quran, I don't know how many thousand times already. All over the world. It's on the internet everywhere. My explanation of this ayah of the Quran. And guess what is the response from the scholars of Islam? Nothing. Total silence from the world of Islamic scholarship. I don't know what else to do. If Allah is not speaking about all Jews and all Christians, well then which Jews and which Christians? The answer is to be found in the words which follow. بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ, which means, listen carefully. O you who have faith in Allah, do not take such Jews and do not take such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. The Quran is saying that the time is going to come when part of the Christian world, part of the Jewish world are going to reconcile and form friendship and alliance. When that happens, the Quran is prohibiting you from being their friends and allies. And if you disobey, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. If you disobey and you remain friends and allies of those people, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, like Turkey, then you now belong to them. You no longer belong to us. When you go down in the grave, you will know the score. You're not Muslim. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ, says Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for a wicked people. And so this alliance of Jews and Christians, they have a trademark. And their trademark is zulm, wickedness, injustice, oppression. Has this alliance come into being? Has a Jewish-Christian alliance come into being in the world today? While we, eating roti chalang, drinking teh tarik. Yes, it is Europe of the West, not Europe of the East. It is that Europe, that Christianity, led by the Vatican, the Pope, which has forged an alliance with the Jews, not all Jews. And the bond which has bonded them together is called Zionism. Zionist Christians and Zionist Jews. And when that alliance of Zionist Christians and Zionist Jews come into being, we are prohibited from being their friends and allies. I was invited to an Islamic conference in Senegal, and they have been after me for months now. Conference is taking place at the end of December in Dakar in Senegal. And Sheikh Imran, we want you there, we want you there, we want you there. So I was preparing for my visit to Senegal all these months, until finally I got the guest list. with the program. And I saw that they invited Bill Clinton. So I replied to them right away, I will not disgrace myself, and I will not disgrace the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam in participating in any Islamic conference in the Muslim world in which Bill Clinton or any representative of the US government is present. That was my reply. Based on Allah's command in the Quran. You cannot be their friends and allies. Bill Clinton is a Zionist, Christian Zionist. So now the Quran has explained to us that this part of the Christian world is a Christian world with which we are going to have friendly relations. They will have love for us. And guess what? I traveled to Moscow last year for the first time. After I had given a lecture at UIA in the masjid on the conquest of Constantinople in Akhir Zaman. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam prophesied that we will conquer Constantinople in Akhir Zaman. What time is the Adhan? Over 8. And they, in Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, they gave us this rubbish. The conquest of Constantinople in 1452 by Sultan Muhammad Fatih, that fulfilled the prophecy of Nabi Muhammad. I said, that's wrong, false. The conquest of Constantinople is coming. And it comes after the Malhama, or Armageddon, not before. He praised the army that will conquer Constantinople. And he praised the commander, لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةِ وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ, said the Prophet ﷺ. But this army that conquered Constantinople in 1452, guess what's the first thing they did? Shamefully, disgracefully, manifestly sinfully, they took the greatest cathedral of Rome, Hagia Sophia, which had been a Christian cathedral for 1,000 years. This is the heart of Rome, this cathedral. And the Sultan shamefully and disgracefully and manifestly sinfully transformed it into a masjid. Shame on you! The Turkish Muslims could be annoyed with me. But my job is a scholar of Islam, to teach deen. And when I speak on the basis of knowledge. Shame on you for what you did. One day we will conquer Constantinople. It's coming. And on that day, we will return this cathedral to you, the Christians. And we will offer an apology to you for what we did. And we will restore the name of the city to that name which Nabi Muhammad ﷺ used with his own lips. He said, Constantinople. So Mustafa Kamal, get lost. You cannot change the name and prohibit us from using the name Constantinople. That lecture reached the whole of Eastern Europe. That lecture reached Russia. And I got an invitation from the State University of Moscow, the most important university in the whole of Russia. They invited me. And I went. And believe you me, Imran Hosein with his hat and beard. And when I went there, the scholars, the Russian scholars, in their most famous university, they received me with so much respect. They treated me with so much respect. And after we had dialogued for, I don't know, about 3 hours. They had affection for me. And they were insisting that I must return. You think I could get that kind of reception in Washington or London or Paris? Huh? Well, I have news for you. Your prophet, he said that in Akhir Zaman, you Muslims will make an alliance with Rome. And Rome today is led by Russia. I wonder how many governments in the world of Islam know about that. Huh? Their favorite pastime is to fly to Washington. Their Qibla is not in Makkah, their Qibla is in Washington. Perhaps it's because the Malaysian government refuses to bend its knee that you've lost the first aeroplane, and then you lost the second aeroplane. And until you bend your knee to them, you keep on being attacked. You keep on being attacked. So this is the Quran explaining that this part of the Christian world is the one with whom you will find love and affection, and with whom you will make an alliance in Akhir Zaman. And that part of the Christian world, which is modern Western civilization, that is the part which will have the greatest amount of wickedness in their conduct. But that part of the Christian world with whom we are prohibited from having friendly relations, they have a sinister agenda. They have an obsession with Jerusalem, the Holy Land. They are the ones, a British army defeated the Ottoman army and took Jerusalem. And on that day when the British general entered Jerusalem in 1917, he said, "Today the Crusades are over." No, the Crusades were never over. They're still having crusade now in Syria. They're bombing Syria. They're bombing ISIS in Syria. It is that part of the Christian world which brought the Jews back to the Holy Land, Britain and the United States. It is that part of the Christian world which brought back the state of Israel in the Holy Land. It is that part of the Christian world which has been protecting that Israel and causing that Israel to grow and grow and grow. And now we turn once again to the Quran for an additional explanation of modern Western civilization. Those of you who are familiar with my book, Jerusalem in the Quran, we have it in English, we have it in Bahasa. Many people buy the book, few people read it. Sheikh, I read the first part of it many years ago. Life is busy. Okay, that's your choice. I explained the subject in Jerusalem in the Quran about 12 years ago. Allah speaks in Suratul Anbiya about a town. The Arabic word is Qarya. Qarya. Kampung. Kampung. Qarya. Allah speaks in the Quran about a Qarya which He destroyed. And the people were expelled. And then He placed a ban on them that they could never return to reclaim that Qarya as their own. Tak boleh. Until a certain moment in time. Let's go to the Quran. It is Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 95. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قرية أهلكناها أنهم لا يرجعون. They cannot return. حتى إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج, until Gog and Magog are released. وهم من كل حلب ينسلون, and they spread out in all directions. Only then will the world witness the people of this town returning to reclaim the town as their own. Today, after you've read Jerusalem in the Quran, everybody knows it's Jerusalem. The town is Jerusalem. Except, you know who? The only people who don't know that it is Jerusalem are the ulama of Islam. That's the only people on the face of the earth who do not know that the town is Jerusalem. The ulama of Islam. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. It is haram for the people of a town which we destroyed and expel them from the town. Haram for them to return. There's a ban on them. They can never return to reclaim the town as their own until Gog and Magog are released. And they spread out in all directions. But it can be translated also as they descend from every height. Who are Gog and Magog? Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Who are they? The introduction, of course, is in Surah Al-Kahf. That's the most, listen carefully, the most important surah of the whole Quran on ilmu akhir zaman is Surah Al-Kahf. If you have to spend a lifetime with Surah Al-Kahf, do it. When you study Surah Al-Kahf, let the tears fall from your eyes, begging and begging and begging Allah to open your eyes and open your mind and open your heart that you might understand the Quran. Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. And Gog and Magog are introduced in Surah Al-Kahf. But we don't have the time to give you a lecture on Gog and Magog tonight. I have a book outside entitled An Islamic View of Gog and Magog in the Modern World, but we don't have it in Bahasa yet. We have Jerusalem in the Quran in Bahasa, but not the one in Gog and Magog. The town is Jerusalem. So when you find a people with an obsession for the Holy Land, to liberate it, like the Pope in Rome with the Crusades, and then they take control of the Holy Land, and they bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. You know, this is Gog and Magog. So now the Quran is telling you that modern Western civilization is the civilization of Gog and Magog, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to accept it. No. Not at all. At this time, your brother Imran Hosein is the only voice in the world of Islam. The only voice saying this. I can't get the ulama to accept what I'm saying to be correct and to be true. But if this was the falsehood, if what I am teaching is false, how do you explain it? How do you explain that every day that passes by, more and more people around the world are accepting this analysis as correct? If you are standing on the foundation of falsehood when explaining the Quran and explaining the Hadith, you should be heading for the garbage bin. Yes. There can be no barakah. None. If you're standing on the foundation of falsehood. The contrary is happening. That around the world people are hungry and hungry and hungry. Sheikh, I want to learn from you. I want to learn from you. I will leave any university in the world to come and study with you. This can't be a trait of falsehood. And so I say to you tonight, based on the Quran, that the civilization that is called modern Western civilization is the civilization of Gog and Magog. Allah speaks in the Quran in Surah Al-Kahf about Gog and Magog. And He says, Inna Ya'juja wa Ma'juja mufsiduna fil ard. That Gog and Magog, they commit fasad. Anything that they touch, they corrupt. And when they corrupt, their objective is to corrupt in such a way as to destroy. Shall I give you an example? Will I? Will you invite me to come back? Will you? All right. All right. There is another actor at work. It's not only Gog and Magog, it's Dajjal. And Dajjal is the mastermind who created modern Western civilization. But we don't have the time tonight to deal with Dajjal. But if you read Jerusalem in the Quran, you will see Pax Britannica, and you will see Pax Americana, and then you will see Pax Judaica. Guess why they are bombing Syria? Do you know why? They are bombing Syria, they say, because of ISIS. But ISIS is a smoke screen that they created themselves. Their objective is to make of Syria another Libya. That's what they want. But they've not been able to succeed so far. No. The Syrian government has been supported by Russia, by China, by Iran, by Hezbollah in Lebanon. And the Syrian armed forces have fought with great bravery. The Syrian people have backed their president and their government. And so 3 years have passed and they've not succeeded in bringing about regime change in Syria. They want the regime change in Syria. Why? Because they want an Islamic government in Damascus. That's why. They want an Islamic government like what you have in ISIS, beheading people. That's what they want. So they can say to the world that Islam is a rising force once again. And Islam is a menace to the world and a menace to Israel. We've got to do something about Islam. So they can wage their pre-planned war, casus bellum. That's why they want regime change in Syria. And they're going to get it now. They're going to get it now. They failed in Ukraine. They set a trap for Russia. And Allah guided Russia. And instead Russia handed them a defeat in Crimea. The biggest setback that the Zionist movement ever experienced in their entire history was the loss of Crimea. And that was the brilliance of Russia. And they're losing in eastern Ukraine as well. So what they did was, in order to start the bombing on ISIS, they had to get the government of Ukraine to settle quickly. Settle with eastern Ukraine. A ceasefire. They needed this. So you got it so that they could start the bombing. ISIS is a smoke screen. The idea is to start bombing in Syrian territory. Security Council of the United Nations can't stop them. Because who is there? Only Russia. If anyone is to stop them from bombing in Syria, it has to be Russia. And that's what they want Russia to do. Because they want a war with Russia. I cannot explain to you in this short period of time why they want the war with Russia. It has to do with the mountain of gold and the river Euphrates, the monetary system, and BRICS. They want to preserve their rule over the world of money. That is what they want. And Russia today is the greatest threat to them because of BRICS. But I don't have the time to explain that to you. I don't have the time. So they're hungry, they're bloodthirsty for war with Russia. It's going to be a nuclear war. But they know they have to do it. Because Israel cannot rule the world until Russia submits. So now the bait is set in Syria. The bombing has started. Russia can do nothing more than protest. And protesting is not going to help you. They will continue to bomb and continue to bomb and continue to bomb until one day the Syrian armed forces will have to respond. And on that day when the Syrian armed forces respond, then the war will really start. It won't last for long. Because Russia cannot intervene. If Russia intervenes, it's nuclear war. And the Russian people will not accept a nuclear war to save non-Russian territory. So it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to succeed. It's just a matter of time before Syria becomes another Libya. But when ISIS takes over Syria, guess what's going to happen? Remember? The Prophet ﷺ prophesied an alliance with Rome in Akhirul Zaman. That's what they don't want. That is what they don't want. So I am telling you, I'm sorry to say it, but I am anticipating that these so-called jihad mujahideen, I call them Dajjal's warriors, from the time they take over Syria, they're going to slaughter the Christians. It will be slaughter of the Christians. These are not Western Christianity, this is Orthodox Christianity. And when the Orthodox Christians are being slaughtered in Syria, in Iraq and elsewhere, then the Russian people will force the government to intervene. And then you'll get your nuclear war. That's the Armageddon. Or the Prophet ﷺ called the Malhama. This is coming. They want the Malhama so that they can force the submission of all the world to the state of Israel. When the Malhama takes place, it will be thousands of nuclear weapons being used. We never experienced anything like this before in history. This will be the first time. When a nuclear explosion takes place, it's a mushroom cloud. So thousands of nuclear weapons, you would not be able to see any sunlight. The world will be in darkness for I don't know how long. No sunlight. When all these nuclear explosions take place, they emit radiation. That radiation will contaminate the atmosphere. So no aeroplane can fly. No missile can fly. No bird can fly. No bee can fly. Because they cannot navigate anymore. No electronic gadgetry will work after the Malhama. No. North America will disappear. Nobody can live there. United States and Canada. Europe will disappear. No one can live there. But Russia is more than Europe. Russia has Eastern Europe and Russia has Asia. And so, another important conclusion from tonight's lecture, and that is that from our perspective of Islamic eschatology, ilmu akhir zaman, Russia will survive the Malhama. How do we know that? Because Nabi Muhammad ﷺ prophesied that the next event that will take place after the Malhama is what? Help me somebody. Huh? Fathul Constantinia. Well, he's been attending my lectures. The conquest of Constantinople will take place after the big war, the nuclear war. And that conquest of Constantinople will take place on the basis of an alliance of Muslims and Rome. But let me warn you that there are fabricated ahadith in the ahadith on Akhir al-Zaman, and you need very good scholarship to recognize those fabricated ahadith. And there are fabrications within ahadith. Part of the hadith is correct and part of the hadith is bogus. So you got to have good scholarship to deal with the ahadith on Akhir al-Zaman. I asked myself why? What is the military significance of a Muslim army after the Malhama? And Israel is now taking over the ruling state in the world. Why should an army be heading for Constantinople? Why? Why not Jerusalem? Is that not a legitimate question? Yes. There's only one answer. There's only one answer that makes military sense. One. And that is that Constantinople commands the Bosphorus, the waterway which connects the Black Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. The Russian naval fleet is in Crimea. Crimea. Russia does not have any warm water port except Crimea, because on the north in the Arctic it's frozen for most of the year. So the Russian fleet, the navy, is in the Black Sea. For the Russian navy to participate in the Muslim-Christian alliance with Rome, the Russian navy has to pass through the Bosphorus to head to Jerusalem. And so the conquest of Constantinople in Akhir al-Zaman has only one military significance, and that it is meant to liberate Constantinople from the NATO controlled by NATO. Liberate it, so that the Russian navy can pass through the Bosphorus and enter the Mediterranean. What I have done tonight in an hour is to present to you from the Quran, basically from the Quran, an explanation of modern Western civilization that you never knew before, because no one has ever taught it. What I've done tonight is to whet your appetite. So this is the Book of Allah, and this Book of Allah has to be studied. You have time, oh yes, to send your sons all over the world and your daughters to do degree in this and degree in that and to become specialists, but you don't have time to send your sons and daughters to study the Quran. Huh? No. You want your son to be a medical doctor. You want him to be an IT engineer. You want him to be this and that and the other. And you never have in your heart that one day your son could sit at this table and do what I have just done. What will Allah do with such an ummah? It is when he cannot get into a European university and he cannot get into a Malaysian university and he cannot get into any technical institute. He can't go anywhere, then he goes to the Darul Uloom. Yeah? So what do you expect to come out of the Darul Uloom? Do you expect that to be the highest scholarship possible? Because all he wants is the job of the Imam. We pray that tonight's lecture would open your eyes the importance of ilmu akhirul zaman, importance of studying the subject, importance of going to the Quran and the Hadith, that they might explain the world in which we live today. We have a little time, inshallah, in which we can respond to questions and also comments. Bismillah. No questions?
My question is about Indonesia and the new Christian government. Is that some sort of Zionist attack on Indonesia? Because it seems to be a very out of place. All of a sudden, a Christian government is elected in Indonesia.
Yeah, yes, Indonesia.
There's some sort of
the Indonesians themselves are not aware that Indonesia has a very, very, very important role to play in Akhirul Zaman. And even the Indonesians are not aware. But to explain that, I'm going to have to spend about 15 or 20 minutes. We don't have that time. I have to go to the hadith about the river Euphrates, the mountain of gold. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. That from the river Euphrates, from underneath will come a mountain of gold. Sahih Bukhari. People will fight for the gold, and 99 out of every 100 will be killed. Everyone will say, I'll be the one who will survive, and Muslims must not touch that gold. That gold, mountain of gold, is the ocean of oil. An ocean of oil which one day will function as gold, and that happened in 1973 when the petrodollar came into being. And the malhama that is going to be fought is because Russia, as the head of BRICS, is challenging the petrodollar monetary system. You know about BRICS? BRICS? Russia, China, India, South Africa and Brazil, these five. And they are challenging the petrodollar monetary system. The war that is coming, that will be fought for the mountain of gold, the Malhama, is a war for the survival of the petrodollar monetary system. The Zionists want to maintain control over money. When the Malhama takes place, there will be no more electronic money, no more paper money, No more plastic money. After the Malhama, it has to be dinar and dirham. Gold and silver. And Israel will then become king. Because the Jews, the Zionists, control the gold of the world. They took all the gold out of Fort Knox. All the gold from the Federal Reserve, all gone to Israel already. That's why Germany can't get back the gold. Because it's gone. So Israel will command the world of money when we return to dinar and dirham, because Israel controls the gold. Now something will happen in Indonesia. Lee Kuan Yew wouldn't like this at all. And Israel's control over money will collapse. What is it will happen in Indonesia? Can anybody tell me? The earth, give me the hadith. The earth will, when a woman becomes pregnant, beginning, doesn't she vomit? Vomiting? You married as yet? Vomit? Vomiting, huh? The hadith says that the earth will vomit from its liver columns of gold and silver. I couldn't understand this vomiting. I couldn't understand it. For 20 years now, this hadith I couldn't understand, until I went to Jogja last month or 2 months ago. And in a retreat in Jogja, one of the people present mentioned that in Java you can't control the people, because everywhere in Java people digging for gold, because the volcanoes sometimes produce gold. It clicked. That's the vomiting. Active volcanoes. That's how Allah will bring the gold out. Where will it come out? It has to be coming out where it's already coming out. And then they told me in Indonesia, from Sumatra all the way down to the end, it's called a ring of fire. You heard about it? Ring of fire, active volcanoes. So it is Indonesia that is destined one day to bring down the control of money that the Zionists have. And on that day, Ahmad Sukarno would smile, because he is the only one. The only leader in the whole world of Islam post-Caliphate was Ahmad Sukarno, who, when Indonesia became independent, he said the Indonesian rupiah must be convertible into gold. And he called the scholars, the ulama, and he decided that 10 rupiah would be equivalent to 5 ounces of gold, or 5 dinar or something like that. You think anybody else in the world of Islam dare to talk about that today? These boys that we now have ruling over us? That was Ahmad Sukarno. That was one of the reasons why they had the coup d'etat, to remove him and replace him with that puppet, that Zionist puppet called Suharto. Ahmad Sukarno is the only leader in the history of the world of Islam post-Caliphate. Only one. Today you'll call him a fool. Those who have peanuts in their head. He took Indonesia out of the IMF. He did. And may Allah bless him for that. May Allah forgive him his sins for that. May Allah forgive him his sins for that. The only one who took Indonesia out of the IMF. Hugo Chavez tried. May Allah bless Hugo Chavez for that. May Allah bless Hugo Chavez for that. If you don't like that statement, go listen to somebody else. May Allah bless Hugo Chavez for that. Because no Muslim leader, none, dared to do what Hugo Chavez tried to do. To take Venezuela out of the IMF. He tried and he failed. And then they poisoned him. So Indonesia had a leader once upon a time. And one day he will smile in his grave when the gold comes out, vomited from the liver. And that gold brings down Israel's control over gold. Any more questions? Yes.
Is the shooting down of MH17 is part of the deal between Russia and Ukraine?
The Zionists, most probably, but we'll never get the true story, most probably are angry that the Malaysian government is not prepared to bend down and to submit over some issue. And they want to teach Malaysia a lesson. So the aircraft disappeared, and then another aircraft was deliberately targeted because it was Malaysian Airlines. It was deliberately shut down because it's Malaysian Airlines. They deliberately did it for Malaysian Airlines. And if Malaysia still does not bend down and submit, there will be other things, other lessons to come. But I don't think the Malaysian government can submit so long as Dr. Mahathir is alive. Any other question? I'm not intervening in the internal politics of Malaysia. But give credit where credit is due. This is the only country in the world of Islam today where Imran Hosein could do the work that he's doing. Where Imran Hosein has the freedom to lecture, to preach. I lectured at USM in Penang on the 9th of September. There were 3,200 in the auditorium. I lectured at UITM in Shah Alam on the 17th. The Vice Chancellor standing next to me looking at this is more than 3,000, probably 4,000 people present. I'm not allowed to do this in Pakistan. I can't do this in Bangladesh. I can't do this in Saudi Arabia. I can't do this anywhere. Not in Turkey. But in Malaysia. So this can't be something that they're pleased with at all. So I think they're going to come after Malaysia. Keep on coming after Malaysia. Any other questions? Yes.
We are always talking about Western civilizations like Christian civilization and Islamic civilization. What about China? Because I've read reports saying the Chinese army were involved in Syria fighting against
Okay. China is a very careful customer. The Chinese don't ever do anything rashly. No. They're very, very, very careful people. But China did reveal its profile when the CIA launched their attack in northern Pakistan in a place called Abbottabad, and they said they killed Osama bin Laden, and then they took his body and they threw it in the sea, and then a big fish came and swallowed it. Remember? And the Pakistani government immediately realized that this was a setup to provide an excuse for an attack on Pakistan. They knew it. The same Pakistani government which worships Washington, the same Pakistani armed forces which shamelessly have been facilitating NATO to massacre the Afghan people, the same Pakistan armed forces now realize that the war is going to come on Pakistan. That's why they did this with Osama bin Laden, this story. So what did Pakistan do? The Pakistani Prime Minister flew immediately to Beijing Pakistani president flew immediately to Russia, to Moscow. Well, my question is, why didn't you go to Washington? Why didn't you go to London? Why didn't you go to Paris? That's where you worship all the time. From the day Pakistan was born, that's where you worship. That's your Qibla. Why you go now to Beijing and to Moscow? Guess what China did? China surprised the Zionist world. China declared, as China has never ever declared before in modern Chinese history, an attack on Pakistan will be an attack on China. When that declaration was made, they couldn't attack Pakistan because they didn't want a war with China on their hands. No. So this is China's profile, which was revealed in that one critical moment. When the Malhama comes, I think China will be on the side with Russia. Yeah. Yes, your question?
Why suddenly that they brought up an issue about Shia and Sunni? And you brought down just now that Iran is part of the group which is protecting Syria. What are they planning for this about?
You didn't hear? Can someone help me?
Shia and Sunni, they're creating this issue of Sunni and Shia. And why suddenly Iran is in the pack of helping out Syria? Is that right?
The master plan of the enemy. The master plan is to foster Shia-Sunni civil war in the world of Islam at this time, in order to, number one, give Islam a bad name in the world. So all of mankind will look at Islam and say, what a pity, these people, look at them, and laugh at us. Shia-Sunni fighting with each other. Number two, that in the Shia-Sunni civil war, the target will no longer be Israel. Number three, Shia-Sunni civil war, and that's the end of Pakistan. Pakistan cannot survive if there's Shia-Sunni civil war. Number four, Shia-Sunni civil war and the whole of Islam will grow weaker and weaker, weaker and weaker. Iran supports Syria, not only because of the Shia link. No. Iran supports Syria because Iran is in an alliance with Russia, Rome and Islam, what the Prophet said. The close relations between Iran and Russia are growing closer and closer. And Syria is an ally of Russia. Russia has a naval base in Syria. So these are naturally allies, Iran and Syria. So there's no surprise if Iran should be supporting Syria in this effort by the Zionists to bring about through insurrection a regime change. Any more questions, or shall we end now? No more questions. Yeah.